let the heaven, and the earth proclaim that His mercy endureth forever. Oh, you let the heaven Father, we praise you. Lord, we praise you. We lift your name on high. Oh, your mercy endureth forever. Endureth Your mercy endureth forever. We give thanks for your mercy. Your mercy endureth forever.
Yes, it does.
And you are Lord. There's nobody else like you, Jesus. His mercy endureth forever. Jesus, we praise your name.
Ngiyanibingelela nonke bazalwane egameni lika Jesu. Amen. Ngithembe ukuthi ngi-visible and you are able to see me wherever you are. Sibingelele also the people who are joining us via YouTube. Nabo siyababingelela. Please guys, do not forget to subscribe to that channel, to subscribe to the YouTube channel so that we grow it. It will be our file, sizoba nama videos of these sermons that will be presented from this platform. Sizoba nama engagement. The last engagement we had on Tuesday, if you still remember, I've been in touch with people who have been participating in that program. They were indeed blessed. I'm blessed by it. And let's continue to support this ministry. Bazalwane, it is for you. It is for your betterment, your spiritual nurture. So as we mentioned last Tuesday, today, the Thursday Thursday service, it primarily focuses on spiritual nurture. Fridays ilapho sobesivula khona isabata, but on Thursdays it's spiritual nurture, where we will look for and focus on one theme esizoqhubeka ngayo. So starting from next week, because it will be August, we will be focusing on the nurture on women upliftment, because since it's a women's month, inyanga yabo mama, since kuzobe kuyinyanga yomama, so we will be looking in terms of spirituality according to women, spirituality according to women. And we will look lama vega out for in every Thursday for the whole month of August. We will be looking at how women led, how women were spiritual in the Bible, and what are the lessons we can get from that encounter. So it's going to be powerful, Bazalwane, starting from August all the way throughout the whole of August, since it will be a women's month. We will be getting women speakers to speak on spiritual nurture. It won't be I won't be the one preaching all the time. So it will be a woman who will be sharing, since it is a woman spiritual nurture. And then on Fridays, into esobesenayo, we will be having a Sabbath opening. We have a speaker, Ksasa, who is coming from the US. He is Dr. Royland Sams. He will be joining us tomorrow. He'll be the one opening the Sabbath for you. So uNkulunkulu Bazalwane has more than in store for us. He has many things that he has for us. So let us keep on tuned to the channel. Let us keep on tuned to this platform. uNkulunkulu has more than enough for us to give. So with those words, siyanibingelela bazalwane, hopefully you've been well and you are keeping safe. It's a very complicated time esiphila kuzo bazalwane. We are living in very complicated times. So uNkulunkulu sengathi we can stay safe. Let us keep on praying for each other. Before we open in prayer, I just want to say those words, ukuthi let us continue to pray for one another, bazalwane, just for moral support. COVID has separated us for so long. I'll say, I know it's gonna sound funny, but it's not a funny story, bazalwane. It's just gonna sound funny. So today, as some of you know, we had a funeral. So I went, and then everything, Kona bazalwane, they were there. And there was some misunderstanding over something eyenzekile, of which was an oversight. As when there are funerals, there is politics eba khona, and kuba social politics, and then izinto zenzeke kubekho. It's like ayikho umngcwabo that is smooth. Vele funerals are not supposed to be smooth, to begin with. Funerals are not supposed to be smooth. So anyway, this thing happened where kube khona misunderstanding. Sesime emnyango siyakhuluma ukuthi senza njani, do we do this, do we do that? One group ithi hayi siyakwenza, enye group ithi singakwenzi, sesiqalile, kube nje that. And while I was listening to that, and I just took a step back, and I was listening to the arguments that were happening, and kuthe kwenzeka konke lokho. And then I said to myself, this is the result of being separated from each other. Because when you think about it, I do not know, mhlambe khona abazalwane who've been babamba ama-prize somewhere or ama-get together. I'm sure, if you're on social media, you see things. mhlambe khona ezenzakalayo. But you know, as generally as abazalwane, we don't we haven't socially gathered together since the last week of March. Now think about it. Since March, we haven't been together. And in sometime in April, we had a funeral in church, but also it was knee deep in level 5. So people were still scared. So we didn't see each other. You know, we didn't really socialize. People kept to 50 and we didn't see each other. Kodwa futhi we just sasiqeda kuhlukana. It was just barely 2 weeks hlukene, and then there was a funeral. And then kwathula, there was nothing until the funeral ibiyenzeka kamason. You know, and that period, it's close to 3 months. Singabonani as abazalwane for 3 months. Think about it. For 3 months, we haven't seen each other socially. And there's so many things that have happened in between. Some they were not meeting socially. Some they were not meeting virtually as what we are doing currently. You know, and so the moment we saw each other, because it has been a time singabonani, that you know we just reverted back to our old selves. Ultimas corner, we have to disagree because that is who we are. It is a social politic that happens. And then I said, this is, you know, when you haven't seen each other for such a long time, because you have nobody to argue with, ubabona bazalwane, nkhumbulane, and then the next thing, phakathi kwilokhunja. And then I realized, guys, we will pray, ukuthi uNkulunkulu akayivule, you know, open the country, let us find the cure so that we can live, because we cannot live like this. You know, I cannot imagine us being life where we find the spiritual nurture via Zooms or YouTube. I cannot imagine it. You know, I'm used to it, but I don't want to become a norm. I want to meet abazalwane, and I want to meet abazalwane without worrying ukuthi uyigqokile imask, have you sanitized? I mean, these are the things that I did even before COVID. I always had a sanitizer with me, you know, but that was what I kept. But now it is a decision of life and death to have these things. And I'm hoping soon we will go back to normal, where we can worship, we can sing, we can hug each other. You know, we can really talk to each other. I wish that day to come, you know. Because that's generally what happened today, and I saw it and I laughed to myself. We haven't seen each other anyway. Bazalwane, the spiritual nurture for today, we're going to focus on the book of Genesis chapter 6. This is the first book of the Bible. Genesis chapter 6, we are reading from verse 22. Before we start sizogobisa amakhanda, when we have a word of prayer. Siyakubonga Nkosi, we thank you for everything that you have done for us. We thank you for who and what you are. We thank you for keeping us safe throughout this difficult time. And Lord, as we have a session, as we're gonna nurture, we're gonna grow spiritually, we ask that you be with us. Help us lapho esingaboni khona, usize ngoJesu siyathandaza. Amen. So sifunda from Genesis chapter 6 verse 22. It's just one verse. Genesis chapter 6 verse 22. Now Noah did this. He did all that God had commanded him. That's just one verse. Noah did this, and he did all that God had commanded him to do. You know, a few years later, I remember I was in the Philippines, and I was invited to be part of this crusade. And when I was invited to be part of this crusade, I think it was sometime in 2011, if not 2010, I was invited to be part of that crusade. Now, as an African guy, I was, you know, you expect to go to, if you're part of a crusade, either uzoshumayela or, you know, you'll be some sort of somewhere, something to do with preaching, because you can't go house to house, because as Benzi crusade, they were doing it the old vintage way. Before with tent and there's something big, the first thing faneke lenza ama Bible studies around, and then man Bible studies, then you will you basically we tent, and then from the tent go back on the whole effort. So I'm getting there and I'm thinking, I'll be part of the preaching. And then when they sat me down, they said, no, listen, you're not going to be part of the preaching, but what are you going to be doing? You're going to be conducting a choir. And ngababuka ngathi, you guys, even funa ukudlala ngami, please don't play with me like this. But no, seriously, we want you to be conducting a choir. Ngathi, but I'm not a choir conductor. I mean, I can sing, but I'm very far from being a musician. So why would you want me to conduct a choir? I mean, to do something that I don't do. If you said talk, then I can talk. That I don't have a problem with. But now you are asking me to sing and conduct a choir, worse, of which. But I said, no, this is what's going to happen. Because we are trying to get the crowd coming to be part of this. Oh, sorry, Masala. We are trying to get, the community to come. So by having you here, since you are African, you are black, so since by having you here, we also have white people who are also coming through this crusade. But what we want you to do, we already have a choir. They are brilliant. They are rehearsed. Aiko into yabo eshodayo. The only thing you need to do is just stand there and just Wednesday as choir directors do. And then I said to myself, okay, now we need to practice. But I said, yeah, okay, fine. And then ngahlangana with the choir, kwaba khona the choir director wabo who was with us, engitshengisa ukuthi this is how you conduct a choir. This is how you conduct a choir, Even he had a team, a sheet of music, eyibekela phansi ukuthi this is how it goes. And since it goes like this, amathena la, so faneko yiwo faneko uwa atule, he showed me everything basically so that I don't make a fool out of myself. And we practiced for 2 nights and 3 nights, and isizoqala iCrusade sebekwenzile okunye sekusele nje ukuthi ichoir will be every night, the choir will be singing, I will be conducting it, a major choir. Now when that happened, and then after the last rehearsal, the choir conductor comes to me and then Nabaplena, they said, listen, don't worry if you are conducting well. The real choir conductor, he is behind you, just below the stage. The people are not going to see him, but he will be behind you, lapha phansi stage. He will be conducting the choir. And as he is conducting the choir, the only thing you need to do is just to wave your hand. You do exactly as what he showed you. Don't worry about messing up. The choir director, he is the one conducting the choir. We did it. It was perfect. Every night, people flocked. Bebeza Crusade, I ended up enjoying it. I was not conducting the choir. There was a conductor. I was just placed there to do this. Now, the whole purpose of telling this story is to show bazalwane ukuthi empilweni, in fact, for anything that for God to do in our lives, we need to do exactly as what he tells us. Because God, he is in the business of changing the narratives of our lives. Now, as we read in Genesis chapter 6, now the Genesis, although that chapter is primarily has been maligned, a lot of people look at that chapter as a chapter of God being ruthless, but actually it is a chapter of grace, and grace based on what God has done empilweni zabantu. Kanjani? You see, the whole concept of grace, bazalwane, it is based on God being good without us doing anything in return. The whole concept of umusa, it is unmerited favor. It is God doing something, whether you did something or awenzanga lutho, you receive it nonetheless. But what makes it special, what makes you stand out, or even for God to take notice of you, is how we respond emuseni kaNkulunkulu. Now, as you read Genesis chapter 6, uqala ukuthi umhlaba had become wicked, But in the wickedness of the world, God was still merciful because he was still giving them life. Abantu, they were still prospering in their wickedness. Abantu, they were still giving into marriages. Babuye bashadise in their wickedness. Abantu, they were still conducting businesses. They were still thriving. Umhlaba wawuqhubeka. And uNkulunkulu was allowing this thing to happen. Umusa kaNkulunkulu wawutheliwe kwabantu for them to enjoy God's grace. So what I'm saying, ukuthi bazalwane, God's grace, it is not predicated on what we are doing, but God's grace is predicated to him and him alone. uNkulunkulu osipha umusa wakhe without us doing anything. And as a result, what uNkulunkulu, as you read chapter 6, ukuthi as the stories come to Caesar, ukuthi while God was giving them grace, Noah responded by recognizing the grace. And that is why Bible Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Now, it is not because God wayemnike nje phela uNoah umusa. Yes, uNoah comes from a family of faith. He is the generation kaMethuselah. He is the generation kaSeth. He is the faithful generation. Le uCain abulala. If you remember, just going back a bit, Cain kills his brother Abel. And then Adam and Eva, they had another son. And that son's name was Seth. That was the faithful generation. Even though Noah came from that generation, the whole world was wicked. But Noah found grace in the house, in the eyes of the Lord. Meaning, Noah, he was a responsive emuseni kaNkulunkulu. He noticed ukuthi uNkulunkulu is doing something, and wahlala wama wathi, God, I am accepting your grace. That is point number 2. For God, bazalwane, for him to do something extraordinary in our lives, we shouldn't just sishiye indaba ukuthi ngiyabonga Nkosi ngomusa wakho, but we should respond and even draw closer to God to see exactly what it is that God has in mind for us. The problem sometimes esibanayo as Christians, or the problem that we have as believers, is that we only take God as face value. We don't go deeper with him. And I'm going to get to the point with how do you go deeper with God? Now, for you to notice, uNkulunkulu esewutholile umusa kuNkulunkulu, uNkulunkulu tells Noah, okay, listen, Noah, I'm going to destroy the world. And how I'm going to destroy it is not just going to be a snap of my thumb and destroy the world. I am going to destroy the world by a flood. Now, you have to understand, by that time, imvula yayingakani. There had not been any rain at that time. Nothing has fallen from the sky. In fact, amazolo, Ichu, was the rain enough for the crops? That's how faithful and merciful God had been. They never knew imvula. They had one season from the time of Adam up to the time of Moses, Noah. They had one season, and a season of plenty, which means the whole earth was green. There was no desert. There was no winter. There was no autumn. They had one season because God was gracious. Lapha wawungadingi nokulala to need a covering, because there was the whole world had one season, and that was warm. Babengayidingi imvula. Imvula sometimes disrupts patterns. You even noma uplan bayaza abantu abakhayo ukuthi you can't build in summer, because the moment work or building a house in summer, rain inconveniences you because utusabeka istin in imvula. So that is why you build in winter where imvula ingekho. But ngesikhathi sikaNoah, they didn't need all of that. They just needed babephila impilo. And God says, I'm going to bring down rain ezobanethisa so that I will destroy the world. Now, number one, they never had ilokunja imvula. And secondly, they were lapha babehlala khona, yes, yayikhona imfula, but le mfula, it was not such that it would carry boats. So what Noah, God was asking him to build, it was something that nobody had ever seen, let alone himself, Noah, ukuthi ayibone. I hope you are still with me. Ukuthi once you become responsive to God's grace, God is able to show you what else is in his mind. So let us not just be happy with just one portion of what God is showing us, but let's go deeper in seeing what else is God has in store for us. Now, uNkulunkulu tells Noah, I want you to build a boat. And now you're asking, I'm sure Noah has asked himself, what am I going to do with this? Because people, number one, they didn't need to travel from one continent to another continent. They were all living in one space. You're born in that. They were all staying in one spot. And staying in one spot, they didn't have a need for boats. Ukuthi zongena intante, it was a language that was not spoken. And uNkulunkulu is telling Noah to build something that has not been built. And Noah, for him, or for even God to even do extraordinary things with him, he had to trust God not only by faith, but by imagination, because he had to be elevated, Abeku the same spot with God, in order to see what actually God has in store for him. And so he builds an ark. And when he builds an ark, now you can imagine, Noah, by the way, he was not an architect. Gota, he finds himself building an ark. Noah was just a farmer, a regular farmer, because most people were farmers. But Noah finds himself building an ark. He had to go, uNkulunkulu amnika ama specifications, this is what you need to do. And Noah does exactly what God tells him to do. Now, when you go with God, and mawufuna ukukhula noNkulunkulu, number one, the first thing you need to do is to shut yourself from what people are going to say. Now, you can imagine the discord and the scorn Noah had to go through when this thing that has never been built before, that has abayas noguti izoyapi, and on top of it, Noah has been telling people for 120 years that a flood is coming. Abangagaze bayibona, because at that time nobody has seen a rain, nobody has seen a boat, and you had Noah building something that protects them against these two things. Now, in order for you, Bazalwane, to be a true recipient of God's grace, you need to listen to the voice of God and not listen to what people say. Now, the problem with what people say is that you're not going to go anywhere far. The problem, if you can imagine what Noah would have become, in fact, Noah, if what's in Kosi, ngiyasaba amahloni abantu nginamahloni ngiyasaba ukuthi abantu bazothini, he wouldn't have finished the project. But Noah, he chose ukuthi Nkosi ngizobheka wherever you are directing me, I'm going to listen to what you're going to tell me, and I'm going to do it exactly as you tell me. The thing is, Bazalwane, if we need to move to the next level of our faith, sometimes we need to be separated from the crowd. That's lesson number 2. For Noah to do this thing, for Noah to build an ark, he had to be separated from the crowd. God can never speak to you while you are still in the crowd. Yes, it is good to have friends. In fact, uNkulunkulu created us as social beings, but there should come a time where you make a faith decision by yourself. Uyabona mawuzohamba ne-crowd and become a crowd pleaser, you are always going to have a problem, especially when there is no crowd to please. Now, I'll make an example. Lockdown has locked us at home for the past 4 months. 4 months, lockdown is valid. Now, the people who are performative by nature, who perform for crowds, they currently are having problems because there is no crowd to perform for. Now, we are living in a time of a ministry where ungena ku YouTube, ungena Facebook, ungena ku Zoom, or whatever platform ungena khona, and response ayikho. And if you are not even guaranteed that people are even going to listen to you, you're just saying your voice in the space. Masenkonzweni, there's always that ilokunji response. Ukuthi mangithi amen bazalane, hallelujah, nizo respond and it's amen. But now we are living in a time where crowd ayikho. There is nobody to please. In this lockdown, agekho umzalwane that we have to please. There is nobody to please. The only person we can please is God himself.
And that is why we need to build a solid relationship noNkulunkulu. And emasiyakha le solid relationship noNkulunkulu. That is why we can never build a solid relationship while you are in a crowd. Moses, for God to do something great no Moses, uNkulunkulu had to take him out of Egypt. Amkhiphe kuFaro, amkhiphe away from the Israelites, amuse Midian. And in Midian, Moses had to stay there for 40 years before God can talk to him. Because God is not a God of crowds. If you want God, akwenze something phenomenal empilweni yakho, the thing you need to do is to remove yourself from the crowd. And once you remove yourself from the crowd, that is when you are able to listen to the voice of God. You know, if you read the story of the shepherds in the Middle East, manje sekushintshile, but in the Middle East, the shepherds abalusi, when they are training their sheep, they remove them, leyo portion, whether it's 150, 10, lezo zimvu, they separate them, bazisa a desert where the shepherd trains them ngevoice yakhe ukuthi mayimemeza kanje ile action ayifunayo, makuthi ayibaleke, this is what he says, so that when times are difficult, when even noma banga izimvu, they can get entangled with other sheep, but when the sheep knows the voice of the shepherd, even noma ememeza, because they know the voice of the shepherd, zizokwazi ukusondela kuye, zisondele kuye. So by becoming out of the crowd, bazalwane, we are being separated and we are able to listen to the voice of God and we are able to grow spiritually. The time is over, bazalwane, ukuthi sizoloke sibase spirituality sethu based on abafundisi. Yes, abafundisi, they are signposts, they are good, but they are not the standard of our faith. The standard of our faith is uNkulunkulu. And uNkulunkulu, for him to do something extraordinary with Noah, he had to remove him from the crowd. So that azolizwa izwi lakhe. And mawulizwa izwi likaNkulunkulu, even when people are mocking, because that is point number 4, people are going to mock you. Imokari, it's going to come. Uyabona uNkulunkulu, when he's doing something special in your life, number 1, you'll be separated. Uzobonakala ukuthi you are separated. Secondly, uzothi uNkulunkulu esekususile amongst people, abantu, they will notice it and they will have something to say. Sikhona isisho sesiZulu esisaziyo esithi ikhonkotha ehambayo. I think siyasazi ukuthi inja ayikhonkotha imoto emile. You know, ikhona imoto emile like it's been years emile. And even noma ngafika inja like ayike ikhonkothe because imile. But the car ehambayo, and I have noticed, even noma ngihambe emgwaqweni, whether I'm running or imoto idlula, izinja ziyaqhamuka ziyayikhonkotha because it is moving somewhere. So bazalwane, also you need to know ukuthi when God is moving you somewhere, you will find and you're gonna meet criticism, because it is part of you growing spiritually. You know, when you grow spiritually, where you are not facing any criticism, where you are facing awunazitha, yonke into yakhe right, you are always okay with people. Maybe there should be a time you ask yourself, actually, ikuphi lapho engihamba khona where I'm not being critic, because fanele ku criticize you at some point empilweni. And you know, I can imagine now he's an old man by that time. And he's building something that has never been seen. He's telling them that something ebangakaze bayibone is coming. Kodwa waqhubeka doing what God had told him to do. Because God is in the business of saving us, bazalwane. And since God is in the business of saving us, he will separate us from things. Now, as siqhubeka, this project, it went on for 120 years. That is my last point as we are coming to an end. Ukuthi faneke sazi bazalwane ukuthi in this project where God is renewing lives, where God is renewing our spirituality, where God is putting us on a bigger plateau, faneke sazi ukuthi it's going to be a project. Ayikho a project that is a masterpiece that took overnight. You know, even if you are a greatest artist, we've got musicians in this group. We have people who can sing. And then they will tell you, ukuthi in order for you to be a great singer, number one, into fanele uyenze, you need to practice. It never happens overnight. It's something that keeps on, has to happen over and over. You need to repeat it over and over again. It will not happen like what I did when I was in the Philippines, where I just for 3 days, just waving my hands, sang conductor a powerful choir. But the real conductor was the guy behind me who had been practicing the choir, so that at some point, maybe practice, they don't even have to see him because they know ukuthi how they've been practicing. So what I'm saying, bazalwane, ukuthi spirituality, it is a process. It's something that keeps on going period by period, time by time. Akusiyona into eyenzeka overnight. Michelangelo, I'm sure siyamazi, for those of us who follow art and appreciate history. Michelangelo, he painted lapha eVatican, there's a chapel abayibiza the Sistine Chapel. It's a Vatican phakathi, where the Pope, he in fact, even tourists, they can come. He painted a beautiful picture lapha with Sistine Chapel. Now, it took years for him to paint that whole chapel. Ceiling, actually, the whole ceiling has been painted, and it took years for him to do that. Akusiyo nje into avela abeka istepisi, wabeka opende, you know, and then he started painting. He had to design it. Kwafaneke ayibeke, he had to sketch it, abuye acime, ayidwebe kahle, and he had to visualize it. He had to imagine what that masterpiece is going to be like, because once he was done, it was perfect. So what I'm trying to say, bazalwane, in our spiritual lives, one thing we need to know, ukuthi it is a process. uNkulunkulu is like an artist, this beautiful and perfect artist. Ukuthi khona izinto asazoyi-eraser ngey'mpilo zethu, khona izinto asazoyisika somewhere, khona izinto asazoyichisela, khona ama-character defaults uNkulunkulu asazowenza. We're going to fall, we're going to get up, we're gonna politiki, kube nezinto singabonani kahle, but God is still in progress. Noah, while akha lo mkhumbi, while people were still mocking him, Noah kept on saying, God had said it, God has given us mercy, and this is a process. Faneke wazi bazalwane, you also need to be kind to yourself. You know, the thing is with us as Christians, and more so to hone it in, us as Adventists, we are not kind to ourselves. We are very brutal to ourselves, not even to each other. We will talk about the aspect of grace to each other as Adventists, in terms of grace, or even we do have, do we even have grace in the Adventist church? But that's another thing for another day. But when I'm saying, when it comes to your spiritual life, be kind to yourself. Don't overrush yourself. You know, when you are unkind to yourself in terms of your spirituality, one thing that always happens is that you never forgive yourself. Because, for instance, you will tell yourself, Uguti, I'm not going to lie. Maybe that has been your biggest problem as a Christian, and you know God does not like liars. Even though Paul Shuguti, those people are not gonna go into heaven. So since you saying, Nkosi, please help me, I'm a liar, you know, to have a truthful tongue. Now, you need to be patient with yourself. Meaning, Uguti, there will be days where you tell lies. Now, it doesn't matter whether you tell big lies or small lies. You're going to tell lies. Now, if you are not kind to yourself, the day you tell a lie, you'll be so hard to yourself to the point that you will not even try again, because you will give up. Well, vele, this thing is not possible. So vele, I might as well give up. But when you are kind to yourself, you have to understand the process. The process of knowing, when we are building characters, when we are nurturing characters, it doesn't mean it's over perfect overnight, but there will be times you'll be in the top of the mountain, and there will be times you'll be down in the valley. But nonetheless, it's still a process. Where you overcome, And when you've overcome, uzotshena nomunye ukuthi I know how it is to overcome. So what I'm saying, Bazalwane, when it comes to your spiritual life, be kind to yourself. You're not always going to be a Christian on fire. You're not always going to be perfect. There will be times you'll be the worst of sinners, but be kind to yourself. Get up. Uyithintithe. Uthi, this is the process. God is not done with me yet. And by doing this, you'll be able to grow in love, and you'll be able to grow. Now, ekugcineni, as the last verse engilifundile, lithi uNkulunkulu esekwenzile. Now, when you go to chapter 7 of Genesis chapter 6, mawuya ku chapter 7, that is when the flood comes. You know, chapter 6, uNkulunkulu gives the whole world an indictment ukuthi the world was evil, but uNkulunkulu was still gracious. And while uNkulunkulu was still gracious, Noah recognized the grace of God and he accepted it. And that's what iBhayibheli lisho ukuthi now Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord because he recognized ukuthi hey bafethu ngeke ukuthi sona kangaka and we are still alive kuzenzakalele, which means there is a God somewhere. And uNoah recognized it and he took it by both hands. And then on top of it, uNkulunkulu wasebenza naye. He removed him from the crowd. Unoah did all that he told him to do. Unoah knew the voice of God because he was separated from the crowd. Whether criticism yafika, whether abantu babemsiza, whether abantu babemhleka, lokho it did not mean anything because he knew, because he started worshiping God beyond just faith, but it was imagination because he saw the imagination, what else was in God's mind. You know, when you spend time with God, mawuspend isikhathi noNkulunkulu, uNkulunkulu is able to show you what he has in store for you. And once you see what God has in store for you, once you see your future, you know, and I used to think, and this is going to be, I don't know how you guys going to take it, whether it's going to be controversial or whatever. But once you spend time with God, and this was my belief, Uguti, as humans, we cannot see the future. You know, we cannot see the future. But I have seen, Uguti, once you spend time with God, God is able to show you your future. Uguti, this. And this is beyond Jeremiah 29, verse 11. Uguti, I know the plans I have for you. Yes, this is powerful. But God goes deeper. He shows your future. Uguti, lalela. If you do exactly as I tell you, yes, my plan is Ogusa through ridicule, is Ogusa through abantu bakleg. You'll be alone, you'll be separated. God, if you do exactly as I tell you, this is your future. This is what I have, and you won't want for anything. And God is able, and when you spend time with him, he's able to show you what else is in his mind. You know, when you speak to the most accomplished people in this world, I know some that are atheists, but abakholwayo, they'll tell you, ukuthi God spoke to me, ukuthi do this, do that, do that. And they did exactly what he did. Because God is the conductor. He's the one conducting. And uNkulunkulu cannot make us in his image. And ati basfuze. And he can able to see and control the future. And then Tina, who follow him, we are unable to do that. It is I'm not preaching something strange, Bazalwane. I'm just saying it doesn't make sense for God to be able to see the future, control the future, and yet I am unable to see the future. So God is able to show me my future. And that is why Noah did exactly what God told him. And as we go to chapter 7, now uNkulunkulu to Noah again. And when he got into the ark, him and his family was saved. We live in a time where it's difficult, Bazalwane. It is very difficult. It is difficult, and as I foresee it, I'm prophet, I'm just musing. But as I see it, Uguti, it will be families who are going to be saved. And the families that are going to be saved throughout this. And saved not Uguti, they will be COVID free. No, not that type of save. Laba abazomazi uNkulunkulu, those families, people who are going to say na inkosi besilindele. These are the people who are going to be separated for the Lord right now. Those are the people who are going to do exactly what God tells them right now. So that mayesebuya, they will know the voice. Ukuthi na inkosi yethu esilindele. So bazalwane, in our Nurture Thursdays, we're going to look into episodes where God is able to grow us spiritually. Today we saw in the life of Noah, which actually God was being gracious. He showed him what he's about to do. And I like to believe because even before COVID-19 came, God showed somebody who this is what's going to happen. And there were some people who were prepared. And we see Tola Sila. So, and I believe there's something good Nkulunkulu is about to do in your life. And as he's about to do in your life, he will tell you, he will show you that this is what I'm going to do because you have responded to his grace. And by responding to his grace, God is able to do wonderful things in your life. The only thing you need to do is to do exactly what God tells you to do. It's not going to be easy. I'm not going to lie. I'm no longer preaching izinto ezilula bazalwane. I don't preach fancy sermons anyways. You know, I'm going to preach exactly what it is. When you do exactly what God tells you to do, it will be tough for some point, but you'll get to the other side. Now imagine the population of that time ngesikhathi sikaNoah. The population yonke yaphela kodwa kwasala 7 people, and that was Noah, his wife, and his sons, 3 sons and their wife. Kwasala bona, and that was it, because one man was faithful. He did what God told him to do. I like to believe some amongst us, God is waiting to save a generation through one of us, and I believe that. And God can do that. He can show grace through one person, and the whole generation can be saved. And that lies in the faithfulness of someone who receives God's grace. Sengathi uNkulunkulu angasibusisa bazalwane. No, ukuthi if you get your cues from God, and a cue is an instruction, you know, to explain the theme for tonight, cues from God. When you're in production, you are told ukuthi ke faneke lindelani, you know, the people who say action, the director, he's the one who says action. And when the director says action, he's the one giving the cues. He's giving the order. Uthi ishow, let it play. The actors, they act. Abanamacamera benza lokho, bane-lighting. Everybody. Once the director yathi action, once the director yathi cut, everything stops. So uNkulunkulu, he is the one giving us the cues. The only thing we need to do is to do it exactly as he tells us. And that is the success of our life. And especially that is where the spiritual growth comes from. It doesn't come from me, Bazalwan. I'm only human. It comes from God when you do exactly what God tells us. Let us pray together. Siyakubonga Nkosi. Siyakubonga for you giving us a character like Noah eBhayibhelini, that through him you are able to show grace to all of us. Amongst us, Lord, we are hurting as individuals. We are going through a lot. Some of us are in spiritual wilderness, you know. But that wilderness, Nkosi, there's something beautiful about the wilderness, because as iBhayibheli lisho ilapho ofundisa khona umuntu how to listen to your voice. So the wilderness is a place where we can grow. Some of us, Lord, we want to work for you, but we do not know where to go. So Nkosi, separate us for your work. Separate us so that silizwe izwi lakho. And give us a thick skin so that even noma criticism ifika, noma kuba khona i-objection, kube khona i-opposition, kube khona i-rejection, singayibuki leyo nto ukuthi, oh, I'm being rejected, which means I'm good for nothing. But siqhubeke moving forward, knowing ukuthi our future is being secured because isiqhutshwa umuntu uNkulunkulu olaziyo future. So I want to pray for each and every one of us tonight who has joined. Sengathi ungaba nabo Nkosi, ubasize to take cues from you, that you may help them in everything they do, in their careers, in emndenini, their finances, everywhere. Sengathi ungabasiza so that everything can be well. Be with us. Bless this ministry as it grows from strength to strength. May we never get too excited, but may we always remember usithathephi wasibeka usaphi. Konke lokhu sicela ngegama likaJesu kuze bephakade. Amen. Amen, amen, and amen. Yes, So bazalwane, I don't know if we can have this engagement. I'm gonna switch it off there